Hi, my name is Kylie Kirchhoff, and I'm going to be giving a presentation over differentiated instruction. Okay, so differentiated instruction is student-centered instruction. So you're going to be putting your students' needs first. Basically, you're going to be dividing up your students into groups. They say that 1/3 of your students already know the content and they're not going to gain anything from your instruction. 1/3 of your students are going to learn the content, and 1/3 of your students just aren't going to get it. So, with differentiated instruction, you're basically looking at those, three groups and tailoring your instruction to fit their needs. It is not an individualized approach like RTI. You are breaking your students up into groups and changing the way your instruction to fit their needs. Your instruction is going to vary from group to group depending on their different needs. So you're probably wondering if this is going to require a lot of additional planning. At first it might as you're figuring it out, but as you get better, it's just going to be something that you're just thinking about, and it's really not changing that much from what you're already doing. Okay, so how do teachers differentiate instruction? First of all, across the content areas, students may be better at some subjects and, not so good at other subjects. So you're going to need to make sure that each student's needs are evaluated for each content. Also, within content areas, students may be good at multiplication, but not so good at division. So within content areas, you're going to need to differentiate how you do things. Also, throughout the school year, kids are going to, their needs are going to change. And the only way to keep up with your students' needs and how they're changing is to do ongoing assessments. For ongoing assessments, you're going to want to do your pre-assessments. This let you know what students need and what group that you're going to place them in. Ongoing tests throughout, that unit or topic, so that way you can see how they're learning, and maybe they were in that higher group, but maybe they're not getting it, so you need to move them down. And then also afterwards, you need to see, have they mastered that content? They do this also through grouping by, sometimes you're going to have to do small group instruction, sometimes whole group instruction, sometimes pairs, all of these different ways are going to help you with your differentiated instruction. Within those groups, you can have homogeneous groups where everyone is on the same skill level, learning, the same thing. And then you could also have, groups where they're different, and you have maybe a pair where you've got two students at different levels working together. Respectful tasks, that means that each student is doing something that is appropriate for their skill level. This is getting rid of the idea that you're just going to teach to the average students because it's best for everyone. With differentiated instruction, each group is working on something that is appropriate for their skill level. When it comes to differentiating instruction, you're going to need to look at a student's readiness, their interests, and their learning profiles. Their readiness is their pre-knowledge for coming into the topic. What do they already know? How much work is it going to take for them to get where they need to be? Their interests are things that, they're interested in. Their learning profile has to do with how they learn, their cultural influences, things like that. Things that are going to influence how they learn the content. So the elements of differentiated instruction are content, process, and product. Content is what you're teaching. The process is how you're going to teach it. And then the product is how you're going to evaluate what you taught. And for differentiated instruction, the goal is to change one or more of these elements. With traditional instruction, you're going to teach the same thing to everyone in the same way, and then you're going to test them with the same test. Okay, so ways that you can change up content is to have different levels of content, tiered content. So, you have groups that are working on different levels, but it's all related to the same topic. You can also provide a variety of materials to your students, different textbooks and books and supplemental materials, different things for them, depending on their readiness, what they're interested in, or, how they're learning. You can also vary your presentation styles, so you're making sure you're hitting students that, are visual learners, or maybe they are more of a hands-on learner. Scaffolding is, a huge part of differentiated instruction. Some students just need a little bit of support to get where they need to be, and then for other students, they need you to break it down into very individualized steps to get where they need to be. You can also set up learning contracts with your students. This is basically you saying, breaking down, this is the content, this is what I want you to learn, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how I'm going to test you. And it's a good way for students to, kind of know what they're getting into and then know their expectations. Another way to differentiate your content is by compacting. So after doing that pre-test, looking at the students that can already, they got a 90% or higher. They already know all of this stuff. So we're just going to compact them out and have them start working on something else, because it would be a waste of their time to stay, on that topic. Okay, you can also change up the process. So this is going to be how you're teaching the material. You can do tiered activities. So each student, it could be, an individual, a group project, or a pairs project, but they're working with, people of the same skill level and working on an activity that is geared towards, their readiness for that topic. You can also set up different learning centers in your classroom. In these centers, you can have different, projects for students, and maybe they're in the blue group or the yellow group, and that's how you can, differentiate it based on their readiness. You'll have different activities for them to do, which will have to, catch students, different interests as well. And also, a variety of different things to do will help with their different learning profiles. You can also do interactive journals with students. This is kind of like writing a letter back and forth with your student. And this is a lot more individualized, because you can read what they wrote and then come up with something for that specific student to, talk about or write about. Graphic organizers, these are different things that you can have students do. Some students, may not need the graphic organizers, some may, and some, may like them a lot because they're very visual, or, you've got a hands-on organizer that they can do. You can also do jigsaw activities, and this is when you have, let's say, 4 students in the group and 4 different topics, and each one becomes an expert on their specific topic, and then they come back to the group and teach the group about what they learned. And you can also use manipulatives in your classroom based on, students' different skill levels. And some students are going to like to do the hands-on thing and, have the visual there. Okay, so when it comes time to finally test your students' knowledge over what they've learned, you're going to change up, what kind of tests you're doing. So this could be, having different levels of tests for students based upon, the different content that they learn. And it's all related, but, some tests are a little bit easier and some tests are harder. Tic-tac-toe assignments. If you think of a tic-tac-toe board and there's 9 squares, students have to choose a straight line of projects to do, and they have to do those 3 things, which, you can have different, boards for different levels of readiness, and, they're going to be different topics, so they're going to hit their different interests and their different learning profiles. You can also do learning menus, and this allows students to kind of choose from a menu what things, they're interested in, and they get to choose what they want to do. You can also do raft projects, which is where the R stands for role, A for audience, F for format, and T for topic. And this would be like a student, writing a letter, pretending to be someone, or drawing a map, or writing a journal article. So when judging a student's performance, you are going to want to use a variety of rubrics, portfolios, and self-assessments to kind of change up how you're judging their performance. When it comes to adjusting grades, not everyone is going to get the same test. So it's okay that, some students, had an easier test, but for them, it was just as hard as the student who had the harder test. Allowing multiple attempts on tests. If a student comes back and redoes their test and they get, an 80% this time, give them the whole 80%. Don't give them half credit, because they did go through and learn that content. When it comes to providing assistance, if you gave them something that they could use on their homework, you need to give them that to have for the test. When it comes to extra credit opportunities, they're okay as long as it's the same thing for everyone and it's something that everyone can do. And on group grades, you want to make sure that you're assessing the individual and not the group as a whole. So when it comes to preparing, teachers are going to need to prepare the parents. You're going to need to explain to your students why you're teaching this way. You want your classroom to be very organized. So, students can find what they need easily. You want to set up your different work zones, and you want to make sure that you have a behavior management policy installed. And you want to start small. You're not going to be able to do it all at once. So if you're delivering instruction primarily by lecturing, this would not be differentiated instruction because you're using the same process. You want to change up, how you're teaching the students. So maybe sometimes you're lecturing, sometimes it's group work or pair work or individual work. If you're grouping students at the beginning of the year based on the previous year's achievement test scores, you're not looking at how students are changing over the year. Their readiness may have changed. They may have learned a lot over the summer. They may have had a tutor or something, and they may have gotten, better. And if you're giving bonus points for classroom participation, you're not looking at a student's individual needs. Some students, do not want to participate in class. It makes them very uncomfortable, and you need to, find other ways to give students bonus points outside of classroom participation. It needs to be fair for everyone.